here. So good to have you join me for my interview series, Diversity and Inclusion in TV, Radio and Film. I've got an incredible guest for you today, but before I reveal who he is, I'd like to say that if you're new here and you really want to get a grasp of what this industry is about and its approach to diversity, inclusion and representation, then subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on anything. And if you've done that already, do leave me a #new in the comments section below so that I can welcome you to the community. Now, the media industry has been under intense scrutiny of late. People with across the board decision makers, channels, media production companies are being asked to step up their game. And I'm speaking to industry professionals in my series about their experiences, their thoughts and ideas on how we can create sustainable change so that opportunities are available for all and not just a privilege. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest today. He's a rock concert director. He's got tons of experience in making films, commercials, music videos, and as I said, rock concert director for the likes of Queen, Mumford Sons, and Beyonce, no less. Welcome, Steve Price.
Hello, nice to be here.
So good to have you, Steve. Now, you work in this crazy world of filming concerts with huge stars and huge bands. Now, that's the front-facing side of it. Behind the scenes, what's it like in terms of diversity?
It could be better, to be honest. Like most of the media industry, it is pretty much dominated by men, and men who are white from a middle-class background. That's not exclusively so, but it's pretty much that's pretty much the majority of it.
And you know, with the teams that you work with, because you travel around the world, and you know, you've got to have a massive crews to get this kind of operation set up. I mean, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine? I can't imagine, but you definitely can. But like Queen, one of the biggest bands on the planet, doing a concert for them is not just going to be in London, it's going to be dotted all around the world. So that requires a huge crew, I'm guessing. What are your crews? What do your crews look like?
We, on that tour specifically, on Queen, we have about 70 regular crew members that travel around. And then you've got the band, and you've got all of the, the management and the assistants that go with the band. There's around about 100 people who are on tour. That's
a lot of people.
Yeah, who are being transported around the world by a tour bus and plane and boats. The age distribution on tour is pretty even. I mean, it's a young person's game, really. It's not something that you want to get involved in full time when you have a family and you have commitments at home, because you're away from home for anything. Well, I'm away from home for up to 9 or 10 months of the year. So there's a lot of young people on it. There doesn't seem to be any age discrimination when we're on tour. I mean, I get invited out with people who are, less than half of my age on my days off, and it's great like that. It's very, I don't feel any prejudice of any kind. I don't feel that there is any conscious prejudice towards anyone on tour. It's not that there has been a concerted effort to shut people out who are from, Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. But it certainly is the case that it is very white on tour, very male dominated, and pretty middle class. But very much, we have people from all nationalities on tour, mainly British and American on most of the tours I do. Depends which tours you're doing. If you are working for Black artists like Beyonce, there tends to be a lot more Black crew members. On the Queen tour, on my video department, we have 10 people on the video department. One of them, Roger, is a Black guy. There's a few European people on the crew, a couple of Americans who are all white. As far as the distribution goes for the rest of the tour, I would say it's probably about 10%, maybe 15 to 20% perhaps female, on the Queen tour, and in fact it's really good on that tour to see that women hold the highest ranking positions as well.
So for example, what kind of positions are we talking about?
Well, our tour director, who is, you know, in charge of the whole thing, is female. Our lead rigger is female, and that's really unusual. It's really unusual that you get women in the rigging department. We have 2 women in the rigging department. It's a very physical job. They are hanging over 50 tons of equipment.
Essentially, riggers are the people who rig all the framework on which lights and everything are hung.
Yeah, yeah. We have 24 trucks worth of kit. They have,
wow.
as I say, they've got like 54 tons of kit that they have to put up in the roof. And they start, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning. It's all up by lunchtime. It's a very
hardcore job. It's a really hardcore job.
Yeah, it's a very hard job, both physically and mentally as well, because everybody's life is, you know, in your hands.
Yeah, you don't want any piece of kit landing on your head in the middle of the concert.
No. And we have, as I say, we have 2 women in that department who are both Dutch actually, and one of those is the lead rigger. She's in charge. She's in charge of it all.
And do you have other female crew members across the board, not necessarily on cameras, but in different?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We have loads of them actually. I mean, we have, when you think of all the different departments that we have, in the audio department there is only 1 female. That's Emma. Catering, wardrobe is a female department at the moment, and in the production office, Jill is our production coordinator. She is responsible for transporting us around the world, for getting us into our hotels, for getting us out of bed in the morning, yes, on the bus. She's been working, I mean, she's got a really good name in the industry. She told me the other day that she's been working for Queen for 7 years, and in that 7 years, she has only watched 6 songs of all that we've done. Over
she's too busy getting everything organized.
She says that during the show, that's the only time she gets any peace and quiet, because everyone's working. So she's working on our transportation for the next day.
Yeah.
And she has an assistant who is also female. Yeah. So
it sounds like it's kind of fairly, I won't say evenly distributed, but you've got a sort of fairly half decent representation. Now, with the decision makers, with big concerts like this, do you think there is now an awakening about ensuring diversity, or is that something that still has to be considered and progressed?
I think it's progressing. I mean, I've been touring for 15 years, and I can see that there has been progress, but there's a lot further to go. If you think that when a tour manager or a production manager is hiring people to come on tour, and they have to hire, you know, maybe up to 100 people, they're not going to spend a huge amount of time seeking people out, interviewing them, meeting them. Generally, you get a call, are you available? And you've been recommended. So it's all done on recommendations.
I was going to say, this industry, TV, radio, filming of any variety, it's very heavily based on recommendations now, which is phenomenal, because if you have done a great job, somebody recognizes you, you get the opportunity, irrespective, you know, of what your background might be, because talent shines, right? In most places. However, by the very same token, though, don't you think that kind of hinders openings for newbies into this business? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it does. I think that when a tour manager is hiring somebody to go on the tour, they want to know 3 things. They want to know that you're good at your job, obviously, that you work hard, and you're a nice person, because the show is only a couple of hours every 2 or 3 days. But the tour eclipses your life. You're all living together, traveling together, working together all the time.
Oh yeah, can you imagine if somebody?
Yeah. So
personalities don't match.
That's right. So we recommend people. I'm asked who, you know, I would like to have on my crew, and we see who's available and we get them in. When you recommend somebody to a production manager or tour manager, and you've answered those 3 questions, yeah, they're a great person, really talented, they've got all this experience, they work really hard. They don't care. what color they are, or what background they are, or even what country they're from. You know, if they're recommended highly enough, they will fly them in from Australia. If they're that, you know, they will go to the extra expense. There's no attempt to shut anybody out because of their color or because of their social background, but it's getting that recommendation in the first place, which is absolutely key.
And so how do you get recommended then? What traits do you need to have, or what do you need to showcase to get a recommendation?
Well, you need to know people who are, you know, who are on the inside, obviously, and it is, you know, it's very difficult to get your foot in the door. Once you are in, like I say, doesn't matter who you are, you know, you're going to progress in the industry. But as long as the industry is pretty much run and contained by white men, you are going to get a lot more white men being recommended, because they will recommend the people that, you know, that they know, who they've grown up with. And if you've grown up in a predominantly white middle class environment, and you're working with predominantly white middle class people, that they are the people that you're going to recommend. I've been I've been very lucky, actually. At the beginning of my career, before I was making live concerts, I was making music videos. You rely very much on, in those days, in the 90s, we were shooting on film. So it was 2 days before you could actually see what you'd shot. It's not like video, you can't play it back. So you need to work with camera crews who are highly trained and who know exactly what they're doing, because your reputation and your work is really in their hands. And I was very fortunate. I was working with a DOP who brought along a camera assistant called Damien Daniel. And Damien he was one of the very few black people working on music videos at the time. But he was brilliant, and we could all see that he was brilliant. So he got his opportunity by being, you know, an assistant. And then after a few years of knowing him, I've known him for like 20 odd years, he then made that move up to being director of photography. And he's doing extremely well, and we still work together. We were working together only 2 weeks ago.
I was going to say,
and so I rely upon Damien because I trust him and I trust his opinion to recommend people for me to work with. And Damien, his upbringing is different to mine. His upbringing and his course through, you know, his education and career and the industry and socially, he's been surrounded by people from you know, minority backgrounds all the time. So by knowing Damien, my shoots have been pretty much you know, highly populated.
Yeah, and I remember, well, that's how I met you, through Damien. He recommended.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
You know, he recommended me to work on a music video with you, and your teams are back in the day were really diverse. And I think you make a really good point. It really depends who you get on board and who they know. And I think it's really important what you said about the connections, because if you've grown up in a middle-class white environment, not made any effort to go discover who somebody else is from a different community, then that's all you're going to know, and that's all you're going to, you know, refer to and recommend. Whereas people from more diverse communities, and don't get me wrong, it can work the other way too, but for the most part, in my experience over more than 25 years in this business, I've discovered that when I've been in a hiring position and I've hired somebody from with diverse heritage, they tend to know, tend to have a wider and more diverse pool of friends and professionals they know, so that when you then start recruiting, you can have a more diverse workspace as well. By the way, Damien Daniel, great DOP, great advertisement from Steve, but it's absolutely warranted. And I've interviewed him. So if you're interested in cameras and working as a director of photography, go check out that video. Fantastic.
I haven't seen that, actually.
Yeah, well,
I hope he says something nice about me.
He didn't say a word about you.
Inspired.
I'm joking. You're great within your own right. So that's really great. You know, you've got your own policy about recruiting, and the great thing is that the more people of diverse heritage you recruit, the more diverse your workspace becomes. So just share with us what's the benefits of recruiting people from different backgrounds.
I see it as just being the benefits of recruiting people that are just really good at their job. I would never employ somebody just because they're from, you know, a minority background, just to tick that box. Well, you know, the people that we use, particularly as a director, it's very important that you employ people who've got more talent than you've got, because, you know, that's the way you learn, and that's the way that you guarantee that your work is going to look is going to look great. So I don't know. I guess it's. Well, I'm trying to find an answer to a specific benefit, you know, of working with people from ethnic minority backgrounds, and I haven't got an off-the-shelf answer to that. I mean, it's going to sound extremely patronizing if I say something like, well, as a white person, it's lovely being surrounded by black people.
No, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. And I don't expect you to say that. I just thought, you know, for example, you know, I've grown up British Pakistani. I've got a very different experience to my counterparts in this business. I've got certain points of view or certain experiences I can bring to a workplace that they may not have even considered, you know, or if it's about, say, writing or whatever, I can bring stories that nobody's necessarily encountered before in my workspace because they're not of my heritage. They don't have that kind of experience. So it was that kind of what I was alluding to.
It's I have noticed that when I work with Damien, particularly when I'm doing something that's documentary based, he's really into the story. He really knows how to tell the story. And then when you see the stuff that he's making in his spare time and off his own back, it's about the story of his ancestors and his heritage and descended from slavery. And in fact, he's making a documentary at the moment about people with the Daniel surname. Which looks absolutely fascinating. So I think maybe when you have those kind of experiences, that makes you more alert to you know, people's stories and their humanity. I can relate to that a little bit because I come from, I don't although I am, you know, apparently white and middle class, I was born in a council house, on a council house estate, and I come from a very working class background, and it was very unlikely that I would, you know, as a child, doing what I do now would have been an impossible dream. And as I grew up, I was kind of encouraged to lower my horizons and prepare myself for a small life. I come from a village in Devon, where I still live. You know, I didn't see anybody that was anything other than white until I was, I don't know, a teenager, I suppose. Around here, there's nobody like that. Although I will say that my dad, who probably didn't meet anybody who was black until he was well into his adulthood, he made a very strong point of teaching me that racism was wrong, despite the fact we didn't know anybody from that had any other kind of heritage than ours. So anyway, so coming from this background, when I started making music videos and when I was dealing with record companies, it suddenly dawned on me that I was in a very, very, very heavily middle-class dominated environment. And that a lot of these guys that were doing, and girls that were doing some really, you know, big videos and big budgets with big names, were being incredibly successful, having only made 3 or 4 music videos. And then I was thinking to myself, hang on, I'm making like 25 videos a year just to make ends meet. And of course, it's because they have this private income. They have a comfortable background. They don't have to take on really shitty work to pay the rent, which is what I did. And then you struggle even more then because your portfolio is littered with these videos which you wish you never made, and you only made them for the money. And that kind of, in the overall arc, can slow you down.
That is a very pertinent point. If you don't have that support network in place, it can be quite challenging, you know, progressing your career.
So I didn't actually go on tour for the first time until I was 41 years old.
Well,
I am 56 now, so it's been, and even then I was jobbing director until I worked with Beyonce in 2011, and things started to take off then. And then in 2014, I started with Queen, and it's just, you know.
Well, do you know what I love about your story, Steve? And I've known you for donkeys, you know, is that you never gave up your dream, you never gave up your passions, and there you are, you've realized them, and it's just phenomenal. It's really inspirational.
Thank you.
I just want to steer the conversation to channels, media organizations, decision makers. I mean, is diversity in the creative industries only something to address when people protest and make news headlines? For example, the Me Too movement and also Black Lives Matter.
I think those movements help, and I fully support those movements and get behind them. And people say, oh, do you think we'll still be also aware and so passionate about this when the BLM movement dies down? I hope it doesn't die down. I hope it doesn't. I hope it only dies down because it can, because we reach some kind of equality. Nobody's looking for power. Nobody's looking to have the upper hand on anyone else. It's not even really about equality. It's just about justice. And so I fully support those movements and what they have done to help help the cause.
I'm inclined to agree with you. But what worries me just a little bit, don't get me wrong, I'm very optimistic about change happening, in media in terms of inclusivity. However, I get a little bit reticent when there is a protest and there's a knee-jerk reaction from the media players. Instead of a really responsive, considered response, it's very knee-jerk, and immediately they start churning out content in relation to Black lives or the Black diaspora or whatever it is. And that always leaves me just feeling a bit uncomfortable, because what I want the industry to do is go away, speak to people like us who are on the ground and experiencing these things, and really get to understand how things can be sustainably changed, So what are your thoughts? Do you think sometimes it can be a knee-jerk reaction as opposed to a considered response?
I think the media is inherently racist. I mean the media is more biased and prejudiced than most industries. I mean, we're talking about the music industry or the live performance industry, and we've been talking about how it's not really anyone's fault. It's just the background they come from, and then they're in this position. They recommend it to their mates, and you've got this cycle that needs to be broken. When you come to the media, particularly the print media, they are actively racist. They actively have an agenda to promote white people, upper middle class white people. And it is in
they would challenge you on that. They would, despite
of course they would. Of course they would. The media have made it quite clear to us that we are not going to get equality either through voting for it or through democratic means or through protest in any way at all. And I'm really worried about that, because otherwise they, if they won't deal with fairness, if they don't deal in humanity, if they continue with a racist agenda, then we're going to have to take things into our own hands, which we see happening a lot
with the protests and everything.
Yeah.
So beyond this, what else do you think could be done to create some sustainable change so that people from all backgrounds get a shot at having a good life, but having opportunity in media, specifically in media?
Well, I know you don't want me to get too political about this, but
you're gonna.
But as a raging socialist, I think that I think the answer to this does lie in the political scene to some extent. And we do need people in positions of power who can, legislate in the favour of people who are less fortunate.
Well, the thing is, you need more of those people from diverse communities, whether that's socioeconomics, whether that's different heritage or sexuality or whatever, disability or whatever it might be. More of those people populating politics to create change.
Yeah, you do. And also, I am very hopeful about the next generation that are coming up as well, the millennials. When you look at the backdrop of what they've experienced in their adult lives, it's an utter mess. I mean, no wonder they've given up on, you know, conventional politics. When I was, you know, 18 in my 20s, it was during the Thatcherite era, and there was a lot of political apathy during that generation at the time, which was very, you know, it's very noticeable. Now it's not. I think there's a lot of younger people now who are more aware of what the situation is, and that nobody's going to fix it for them. They're going to have to do it themselves.
Well, Steve, do you know what? I could talk to you all day long. I love it that you got so much to say, but unfortunately time has caught up with us. And I love that we've ended it on a positive note. You know, the next generation are more proactive around this, and they're very aware. So, you know, I live in optimism for sure. But listen, thank you so much for sharing, you know, about your work and what's happening in that environment in terms of representation. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on, Samina.
It's been great. Thank you. Now, if you, you know, if anything in that interview resonated with you, or, you know, you feel like you've got something to say about it, then please do, you know, leave me your message or anything you have to say in the comment section. And also, if you appreciated that video, please do hit the like button, because I'd really appreciate your support. And if you feel that this discussion could benefit somebody else, then you can feel free to share a link of this video, or indeed any of my videos, with others. Now, I'm really interested, as always, to hear your stories too. So if you work in this business across TV, radio, film, any aspect of media, then do get in touch with me and share with me your stories, your experiences around diversity, representation, and inclusion. As always, it's been a huge pleasure to have you join me today. Thank you so much. And I look forward to catching up with you next time, when, of course, I'll have another amazing industry guest with me. See you then.